The United Nations is mostly known for the geopolitical problems that it tries to solve, but economically it is basically a small country itself with an important economic impact to all that it touches. Arise News UN Bureau Chief Frank Ucciardo is here with more. Frank, this is a really interesting story that we don't cover that much. This is an economic force, the UN, both in giving out money and spending money.
You know, it's true what you said. The UN is really kind of a country unto itself. You know, there's been this long domestic debate in the U.S. over whether or not America is getting enough of a return on its investment in the UN, and the numbers may be surprising. The United Nations budget is more than $5.5 billion a year. This does not include the money for peacekeeping that is running at over $7 billion a year. The United States, which pays 22% of the UN budget and more than 28% of the peacekeeping tab, is the biggest financial contributor to the United Nations. Emir Dossel of the Global Partnership Forum was the UN's chief liaison for partnerships. He says a lot of the money is spent in the U.S. by the more than 10,000 UN employees working here.
Their salaries run between 1.2 and 1.5 billion. They spend bulk of it here. They buy cars, they lease cars, they buy homes, they rent homes, they purchase utilities from Con Ed, Time Warner Cable, go to Broadway shows, etc. They spend their money here.
One of the other dimensions of the UN spending is 200 U.S. companies who provide goods and services to the United Nations.
You know, when this building was renovated, it cost about $2.1 billion. All of it, bulk of it, spent here.
So basically, the UN is this huge economic engine that does get money from countries around the world, but that money ends up right here in the U.S.
Yeah, Frank, it seems like the UN has quite an international payroll. What does that do here in the United States and in New York, here in Turtle Bay?
Yeah, good question. You know, here in the tri-state area, they are the top, among the top 20 employers. And that includes really Wall Street and all these major blue chip companies that make their home in this area. So they employ an incredible amount of people locally. And as far as the economic trickle down from that, those people really do spend here. And I'll tell you, just as an
they don't pay their parking tickets.
Well, no, that is true. That is true.
But they do spend.
They do spend. In fact, I can tell you these anecdotes. The French ambassador, former French ambassador to the UN, he bought a condominium here in New York. He's going to retire here. Okay, this is one of his retirement homes. Right, he's going to be spending money here. The former Iraqi ambassador to the UN, he's come back here to live. He's brought his entire family here. He's teaching at a major university. And the one thing I do hear from a lot of envoys and workers at the UN is when they retire, they want to come back here and bring those pensions here.
I'll tell you, if you speak to the little, shops around the United Nations, they rely on the UN. I mean, just the delis, for example. It's a big deal. Why are we not paying our bills?
Well, you know, as of 2015, January 2015, the U.S. is now in arrears for about $654 million, maybe just in excess of that. And, historically, that goes back to a lot of prior administrations. I mean, back during the Reagan administration, they rolled up a huge bill of nearly $1 billion. Then, of course, during the George W. Bush administration, as soon as he finished and President Clinton got elected and came into office, the U.S. literally sent the ambassador Richardson across the street with a big check for $475 million to pay the dues. So a lot of this has to do with what's going on in Congress, whether or not there's a
lot of people who don't like the UN.
Exactly, and you're going to find those among congressional members.
But of 22% of the budget or whatever, where's the rest of the world? Why aren't they contributing?
They actually. You know, I just checked the figures before we went on today, and out of the UN Security Council members, the most influential, there are only 2 members that have really not paid. And one of them is of the U.S. A lot of the smaller countries have paid their dues and arrears. So I think it really comes down to the fact that, okay, people have to, step up, and they usually wait till the fall, till the final quarter of the year to pay all their arrears and dues.
Interesting. Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good story.